I didn't know there was anything apart from trees that you could climb. Anything that's given to me, I will just go for it. I guess that's like climbing. Like I'll see a climb, I'll give it 100% effort, and if I don't do well, then I'll get another go. I just get back on. I think it's a bit weird that we've decided that you're supposed to get to the top of that. Like, it's just a completely made up challenge, isn't it? Like just a rock in the middle of nowhere, and you really, really want to get to the top of it when you could just walk around the back. I'm Hamish McArthur, and I'm a 17-year-old climber.
You're listening to Drive, content driven to inspire. The opening sequence was from a short documentary that I filmed with Hamish last year, and we recently met up to chat about his progress. The sat across to me today is the Vice Youth World Champion, Hamish McArthur. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Nice to be here.
Yeah, how are we doing today, mate? You been busy?
Oh, good. Yeah, kind of. Just training, revision, got exams, so hard to balance, but good. Made some time.
What are you studying for at school?
A-levels in maths, biology and PE.
So it was a year ago that we did our documentary filming, so I thought it'd be great to chat for a little bit longer and see what you've been up to over the past sort of year or so.
Yeah, it's been a while. A lot's happened. I feel quite different. I got a bit of a different outlook on the sport, and just after events that have happened, like competition results and all that. And yeah, it feels like it's about time we need to catch up.
Absolutely. What sort of events have you been involved in this year?
Well, when we first spoke and we did the little short documentary, I was in a bit of a time period when I was a bit frustrated. I felt really good and I was climbing really well, but competitions weren't always going as planned, and I was always just missing out on the podium and stuff. Yeah, but the next competition after we finished our documentary, I made podium at the European Youth Cup in Imst in Austria, and then about a month after that I stayed out in Austria, trained with other countries, and then went to Arco in Italy, and then I came 5th in the lead Youth World Championships there, and then 2nd in the bouldering Youth World Championships.
Wow, it's a busy year then.
Busy year, yeah. And then after that, I went and did some senior competitions, made some semi-finals. So it was nice, very relieving to finally break the barrier and make podium and really realise my potential that I knew I had. I knew I could always do it, but I always just got unlucky or missed out. So yeah, it feels good to finally break through. And once I made one podium, they just kept coming.
Amazing. I bet you saw a lot of Europe as well going around there. Is it quite a nice group that you go around with, the other climbers?
Yeah, so nice.
Quite close-knit, I suppose.
Yeah, we're all really close. I guess in a sport where you belay each other in training, you got literally their life in your hand and your life in their hand, and they're belaying you. You get really close with them. So all my climbing friends, and from not just Britain, but I've got friends from all over that I meet at competitions, and we're all really close, closer than like me and my school friends. Even though we see each other way more, it's like a different
connection.
Sort of,
Absolutely, yeah,
for sure. Because we're all very passionate about this one thing as well. We've all got a very solid base of connection. Like me and my school friends, yeah, we go to the same school, we're the same age, but it's different to have a very specific passion that you all share.
So whereabouts did that passion actually come from in the first place?
Well,
when did you figure out you loved climbing?
I didn't really figure it out. It was just always there. Before I climbed, when I was 2-3 years old, I was always climbing up stuff, climbing up trees, the house. Much to my parents' annoyance, I was always running about climbing stuff. I was a bit obsessed with ladders, but I was about 3 or 4 years old.
That's a bit dangerous, Hamish.
Yeah, I know. I would always just, Mom, can I go climb that? Can I climb this tree? Like, no, Hamish.
So what did your parents think of that then?
Well, they are always really supportive, of course, and they just want me to be happy and find something that I enjoy. So although at the time it was probably a bit frustrating for them, for me to always be running around, they didn't know where I was, and I'd look up and I'd be on the banisters or something. But they found a way to channel that by taking me to a climbing wall on my 5th birthday. Just basically to stop me climbing in dangerous settings and get me to do it with an instructor and a helmet and all that. And yeah, so I went there for my 5th birthday. Didn't enjoy it too much when I first got there because I was just intimidated because I was the youngest kid, because they actually lied about my age to get me to go, and you had to be 6 years old. I went in at 5, and all the big kids, and I was a really, really small child, so I was a bit intimidated by everyone, and the massive walls, which now obviously don't look so big to me, but at the time I thought they were just going to make me go straight up, and I was a bit overwhelmed as a little kid who climbed nothing but trees and the house, basically, to suddenly be in this setting surrounded on all sides by climbing walls. So yeah, I started crying when I got there. My dad was like, "Hamish, you don't have to do it if you don't want to," but it was inevitable that I was going to give it a go. That's just who I am. So I started climbing, and the instructors at the end said I was really good, and I was climbing stuff that the 7 or 8 year olds couldn't climb, and
amazing.
that just drove me, and I just exponentially started going more and more and more and getting more into it, and realizing that I can get more out of climbing than just the bit, like the fun that you get from seeing it, or just to actually do it, and fell in love with the sport, really.
And when did that turn from a hobby, I suppose, into a competing sense of your personality?
It's a good question. Well, I'm always competitive. My dad's really competitive as well, and I've always loved competition because I'm quite stubborn. I don't like to be left behind or lose anything. So I've always been competitive and comparing myself with other people. So when I found out that I could do that in climbing, I think I was maybe 8 or 9 when I've entered it's called the YCS, which is like a little youth climbing series. It's a national competition, but it starts with regional rounds just at your local climbing wall. So I was the youngest in the age, it was like a 3-year age category. I was 8, I was competing against 9, 10, 11 year olds. And there's 3 rounds to it, and I entered two of the 3 rounds just because on one day it's probably someone's birthday or something, so I didn't go to that. And then I made it through to the finals in Edinburgh, and the national finals of 2 rounds of the 3. And I went to the finals, and again, I was overwhelmed. It felt pretty similar to when I first went to the climbing wall, just because it was massive wall. It's still a huge wall. There's European championships are there this year. So yeah, it's a huge wall, and I was again small and competing against people who are way better than me. I think I came like 32nd out of 35 or something. Like I wasn't too good, but I obviously wanted to enter the competition again next year, and I came 25th, and then 12th, and then 8th, and then 3rd, and then 1st, and then
amazing.
And then I just every year I just improved because I was more involved than any of the other kids. I think I not only tried harder in training and stuff, but I just enjoyed it so much more, and I was willing to give more than the average 10-year-old to a hobby. I always saw it as more than just a bit of fun. I knew that I could go places with it.
So why do you think you've got the edge there then? What sort of sacrifices have you made to get where you are today?
Well, the obvious, like not going to parties and stuff. I'm still a 17-year-old kid. Like it's not like I'm living in a bubble where that doesn't happen. I just have to refuse. I just have to say no. I can't go. I'm training every day stuff. Like my friends are going into town or whatever. I'm basically training like four plus hours a day.
That's
so
insane. Working on that conditioning.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you don't really see from looking at my Instagram or whatever. That's just the front of the most interesting parts to the average person. But yeah, there's a lot of sacrifice in that element, and just social stuff like that. But then also social stuff, I don't know, there's another social side of the climbing wall that I wouldn't get if I wasn't so dedicated to it. Like I met so many friends I was talking about before.
Yeah.
Friends who I'm way more connected to than school friends, and I feel like it's not really a sacrifice that I regret in any way, because through this sacrifice I have
Opened up to a whole new climbing community. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And that gives way more opportunities in the future.
Have you found that with the likes of films such as Free Solo, climbing is becoming more mainstream, and how's that kind of have you seen that at the local climbing wall there?
Yeah, 100%. Well, the first time I really realised free solo was such a big impact is when my English teacher, some English teacher at my school came up and started talking to me about it, and everyone just seems to know about it. People who have never climbed a day in their life and who've got no idea about sport climbing, but who see climbing through the lens of the media, which is free solo at the face of that, with Alex Honnold and his crazy ascent of
El Cap
in Yosemite. Yeah, it's mental, but it's not really the climbing that I do. Like, it's not sport climbing, not competition climbing, but still in the media, like on adverts and newspapers or magazines or whatever, there's always climbing now, because it's quite a romantic idea of getting to the top of like the pinnacle of whatever the company is. Like, I think it was a car advert that I saw on TV, and there's this climber that I knew from Britain who was like the face of the advert, and she was climbing up some rock in some dramatic location, and then she got to the top, and then there's this shiny car that drove past her or whatever. And whilst it's got nothing to do with the actual product, it's really easy to use from an advertising perspective as like, this is the pinnacle, or and this is adventurous. So I see it a lot there, and that presents more opportunities to the average climber. Like, they will see it and then they'll want to go to a climbing wall and see if it does fit the idea that they see on the TV, and it kind of does in some way. Whilst it's not as dramatic at a climbing wall as some sweeping cliff in Utah or whatever, you go to the climbing wall and you do feel like you're conquering something when you get to the top. For a beginner climber, I see it all the time, you overcome your fear of getting to the top of a wall, and it's quite an empowering experience.
For Alex Honnold, obviously, that was his dream climb, wasn't it, to summit El Cap free solo. What would you say your dream climb is?
Well, okay. Well, competition-wise, Olympics, that sort of competition side. But now there's a whole new side of climbing that I've kind of just discovered with outdoor climbing, because I went away at Christmas time with some friends from Italy, and we went to Spain and climbed outdoors there, and turns out I can climb outdoors pretty much as well as I can indoors. So that was a nice surprise, and it's opened up loads more doors just in the future. I feel like I've got like a backup plan in case competitions don't go so well, or after competitions have finished and I'm not on my physical peak for that sort of thing. So there's big benchmarks in outdoor climbing, more quantitative than indoor climbing. It's completely graded. Like, there's Adam Ondra, who is the best rock climber in the world, pretty much, who's done the hardest graded climb of 9C. It won't mean anything to a non-climber, but that's like legendary and groundbreaking in the sport. So yeah, I would love to push my limits outdoors and push the limits of what's humanly possible. I don't feel like I have anywhere near reached my outdoor climbing limits, but I'm already feel like I've got loads of more progression to make there. I've only done it a couple of times really, but I'm really
that's exciting.
Up there.
Yeah. So you mentioned Olympics.
Yeah.
And sport climbing is just becoming an Olympic sport for the first time ever in 2020, isn't it? Why do you think this is? Do you think this is with the push on mainstream media?
I feel it is partly to do with that, but partly just it's overdue to have climbing in the Olympics. There's no reason why it shouldn't be, really. It's one of the few natural human movements is running, swimming, and then climbing. That's what people have done for hundreds of thousands of years, really. It's kind of essential to everyday life when you're a human being, but it's not really being seen in that way. It's not seen as competitive. It's just kind of got a stigma of this, what the hippies were doing in the 80s and their lycra, and it's been stigmatized, but now it's finally getting recognized as being a serious sport with athletes as dedicated as any other sport, really. So yeah, I feel it's just about time that it should have.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Are you aiming for 2024 there?
Yeah, Paris is 2024, and that is lead climbing and bouldering as a combined discipline.
Amazing.
Instead of in 2020 where it's lead, boulder and speed climbing, because I don't speed climb. I'm not built for it, really. I'm not too good at it. But yeah, 2024, 100% I am focused on now. That's the ultimate goal, to medal there or win there, ideally. But yeah, who knows what will happen in 4 years' time. Like, there might be some new dominant climber who hasn't even started competing yet. You know, there's 4 years and we'll just have to see what happens.
Are you still loving climbing as much as you did when you first discovered it, climbing the banisters?
Yeah, loving it in a different sort of way now, because it is kind of a job. Like, I focus solely on it now. Like, basically everything I do is oriented towards maximizing my climbing ability, which is a strange thing when it's also a hobby. It's in a weird phase at the moment where I'm not getting paid enough through sponsorship to do it full time, especially with school, but it is also a realistic future for me. So I'm trying to make it into a future whilst still enjoying it, because if it comes to a point where I'm not enjoying it anymore, there's not really any point in having it as a job as well. It kind of defeats the whole point of doing what you love, and that's why I climb in the first place.
And does this sense of competition and drive kind of transcend into other aspects of your life there, especially with school coming up and these 100%. Exams?
Yeah, with basically everything. It's mostly just I hate to lose. Like, that's basically the driving force of a lot of things for me. Although with school, it's not as much of a passion as climbing. Obviously, I don't particularly care about the arbitrary mark that I get in some exam, but I also absolutely hate it if some other kid in the class gets a better mark than me. So I do focus in school, and I put a lot of effort into that just to get the required grades for me to be satisfied with myself and feel like I've done myself justice in that sense of life. But yeah, I'm not as passionate about that, obviously, as climbing. It's more just something that needs doing. If I'm going to be at school for, say, when I started A-levels, I know I have 2 years of school left before I can become a full-time climber. So I either can do those 2 years of school scraping by, getting into trouble, not quite being at 100%, or I can spend those 2 years getting good grades. It just makes it a lot easier. When I'm a good student, school's a lot more happy for me to say, oh, can I have a week off here to go to Russia, or can I have a week off here to go to Italy to climb? So yeah, it's something necessary, I think, that just needs to be done.
Yeah. And you mentioned you're going to Russia just before we recorded this. Moscow soon, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the competition there?
That is the European Championships for lead climbing. That's what I'm going for. It's a combined event, but I'm just doing lead climbing there. It's the last 2020 Olympic qualification event, so everyone's going to be there pretty much. It's not, although it's a European Championship, it'll have the field strength of a World Cup probably, just because there'll be so many people going to that as a final bid to qualify for the 2020 Olympics. So I can't qualify because I'm not entering in boulder and speed as well. I'm just doing lead climbing, but yeah, I'm still wanting to show what I can do in this one discipline, because I'm feeling good at the moment. I've been working hard over winter, and yeah, it's nice at the start of a season to do your first competition and see where you stand against everyone, knowing I've basically got the rest of my life to improve after that with no more school, hopefully.
With training as well, I mean, what kind of aspects go into that aside from climbing? Is it early morning runs like you
Yeah.
mentioned before, and
Yeah.
and dietary constraints? But what kind of goes into that off the
Yeah.
wall?
Well, I don't have any dietary constraints. I don't have a nutritionalist.
Oh,
or-
really?
Yeah, maybe I should. I feel like I've been thinking about this recently. Now everything is marginal because basically everyone's in the peak physical form they can be, and everyone's trying to get in the peak mental form they can be. So I just feel like I need this like small edges to keep up and to improve more than everyone else. So I think I will probably look into that at some point, or maybe do my own research. But yeah, I don't have a nutritionalist, but I do eat healthily just because I enjoy that, and my parents eat healthily anyway, and I'm still living at home, so I generally just eat what they eat. So I don't have too much choice at the moment, but next year when I move out, and that'll be a lot more up to me, I'll be able to make more decisions about that. So yeah, nutritionally, I'm pretty relaxed at the moment, just general healthy food, protein, carbs, all that. But yeah, physically, for like physical training, I do run in the mornings twice a week, not far, not particularly fast, but just to get a base cardiovascular fitness as that has crossover with lead climbing. So yeah, I run in the morning and I fingerboard in the morning, which is basically, this from the documentary, but
Yeah,
basically a boring hour spent strengthening your fingers by hanging from little bits of wood
looks painful.
with weight. It can be, but yeah, it's more just a bit dull when you're doing it at 6:30 or whatever, when everyone else is still asleep and you just got your headphones in and getting on with it. So yeah, I do that, and then I go and climb, how often? 6 times a week. But that doesn't just involve having fun, messing about with my mates at the climbing wall. I maybe have like 2 sessions a week doing circuits, so basically climbing around on some overhanging wooden boards, just doing, say, 5 minutes on and then resting for 5 minutes and 5 minutes on. So I do that. I do other types of climbing at the climbing gym, just to, again, strengthen different aspects. So some finger strength like style climbs. It's hard to explain to someone who doesn't necessarily know the details of climbing, but yeah, I do different climbing exercises.
It sounds intense, Hamish.
Yeah, and then after each session, I will do conditioning exercises. So like weighted pull-ups, push-ups, muscle-ups on the rings, like all that sort of thing that you kind of get in every sport. But because climbing is so strength-weight ratio oriented, it's really important to be in like top physical form for that. Yeah, just to make sure you're ready for the most demanding moves.
Have you had any injuries as of yet?
Never a major injury. It's quite common in climbers to get finger injuries, but I've been lucky to avoid that. Or maybe not lucky, I've tried hard to avoid that by making sure I warm up properly and have strong enough fingers that it's hard to get injured. And I've never had any major injuries, just little tweaks and tightness basically everywhere. So I try and stretch out and foam roll, but it's quite hard when you're putting on new muscle basically weekly over the like winter season when you're trying to get in top form. It's hard to not get any tweaks or tight muscles that then impinge other muscles. So it's basically every day I phone my coach and speak to him on the phone about this is a little bit sore or this is feeling a bit tight, just to tweak my training appropriately so I don't further exacerbate an injury or make anything worse that doesn't necessarily need to get any worse. If it's just a minor injury or a minor muscle strain or whatever, it's better to just have 1 day of rest rather than climbing on it or training using it and make it worse and then have to take 3 days rest, say. So yeah, it's training smart, and luckily I've got that point of contact with my coach to make it so it's not just my decision and I can trust that he knows what he's on about.
What's your biggest challenge, would you say, while you've been climbing for the last sort of 12 years in competitions? Is that correct?
Yeah. Biggest challenge? Good question. I was not say the obvious thing which comes to mind. I think just because it's a thing that a lot of people struggle with is motivation, because I'm always driven and I'm just that type of person that I give 100%. I don't make excuses generally, but I'd say the biggest challenge is making sure I'm doing everything right and having doubt in what I'm doing and overcoming that, because it's quite easy when you're wanting to be the best athlete in the world to doubt that, say your diet's correct or your training's correct, or should I be training on this tweak or that. So yeah, making sure that I fully trust the process and just take it one session at a time and have 100% faith that it is gonna all pay out, and that there'll be a day where, oh, I've improved slightly at this, or I am getting better. Because when it's such a long process to improve at the high level, it's quite hard to see day-to-day improvements. So staying motivated when every day you're basically going and doing the same things, or every week you're doing the exact same exercises, it's quite hard to see
that sort of growth.
That growth. Yeah. You have to just look at it over a longer time frame. So now I've learned to look back and say, oh, 2 months ago I was this strong and now I'm this strong. That is an actual improvement, although you can't see it at the time. Just having faith that it isn't for nothing, and all the effort and all the sacrifice is actually doing something. It's not completely in vain.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been the biggest challenge, learning that. It's taken the vast majority of that time that I've been fully training to kind of take a step back and look at it and think, okay, it is actually paying off. And now I am starting to get the results that I know I can get. Yeah, that's been the hardest thing.
And as we kind of get closer to wrapping up here, have you got any advice for anyone who might be thinking about climbing or is just starting out climbing?
Yeah, the biggest piece of advice I can give is it's not as scary as it looks. Although when you get there and you see the big gym lads who come in and they're all strutting about their tops or whatever, don't be intimidated at all, because it's not necessarily as scary as it looks, or as, I don't know, it's like those big guys that you see aren't necessarily the best climbers. You'll get some like 10-year-old kid who comes in their school clothes and will be climbing way harder than them. So yeah, just giving it a go. You never know how good you are at climbing. I know from just looking at weightlifting, say I'm never going to be as good at weightlifting, or I'm never going to be as good at gymnastics because I'm not built for it. But in climbing, you can be basically any size or shape. I'm a tall climber, and there's such small guys, and there's muscly guys, and there's skinnier guys than me who are all at the top level. Like, it's not body type dependent really. So just don't make excuses for yourself based on that. And you can still have fun even if you're not the best climber. That's not the only reason to do it, is to be the best. Yeah.
That's great. I might have a little go myself, to be honest.
I think you should.
Yeah.
I think you should.
It's something I wish I kind of got involved in, to be honest.
Yeah, it's never too late. That's the other bit of advice. At the climbing gym I go to, at Red Goat Climbing Wall in York, there's guys who are 70 years old and 70 plus years old, and then also people there are like 6-7 years old, and it's very inclusive sport, which is nice, and it's just such a friendly atmosphere in there. Everyone knows each other, everyone's super supportive and chatty and friendly. It's good for anyone. That's probably the best part about climbing, is anyone can do it, any ability, any age. You don't need to be particularly sporty even to get involved in it.
Well, thanks for coming down and chatting with us, Hamish.
Well, no worries.
And good luck with all the competitions, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, see you in a bit.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to the second episode of the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to be notified when new episodes are released. You can hear more from Hamish about all things climbing at The Projection Podcast, and visit our YouTube channel to watch the short documentary that we shot last year. My name is Chris Healy, and I've been your host. See you in the next episode.